This Friday, the All Blacks and the Springboks are doing battle at Twickenham, and it's their last warm-up game before this year's Rugby World Cup. In this video, I'm going to do a preview of that game. Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name's Mark, I'm the Kiwi guy living in Cancun, and in this video we're going to be having a closer look at the All Blacks playing the Springboks this weekend at Twickenham in London. Now this is going to be a fantastic game, I'm sure, as it always is when the old foe get together, and playing on neutral ground gives it an extra bit of spice in front of 80,000+ spectators that are going to cram into Twickenham this weekend. Now before we have a look at the teams today, I just wanted to give my perspective on what I think the coaches will be looking for from this particular game. It is the last warm-up game for both teams before they head into the World Cup, and they've got a 2-week break now before the World Cup actually starts. So how do they play this one? Do they go all in and put their best teams on the field, or do they rest some players? I think it's important for both teams to have a hit out with their best teams, or close to their best teams anyway. In the case of the All Blacks, it's been 3 weeks since their #1 team played against Australia in Melbourne, and since then they've been juggling the team around a little bit. So some of those players haven't had a game for 3 weeks, and I think it's really important to get them back into momentum, get the combinations going again as they prepare for that first game against France in 2 weeks' time. South Africa, on the other hand, had that game against Wales last weekend, played very, very well indeed. A lot of people made comments on my channel about how that was a Wales B or C team, and never mind the fact the Springboks still had to do the job, and they got the job done impressively, I thought, against the team that was put out against them, which is all that they could do. We saw Kolesi coming back last week against Wales, having a good 41 minutes or so. And I think it's really important now that Kolesi gets some game time. He played very, very well in that 41 minutes against Wales, but I think he'll be really up to play the All Blacks this Friday at Twickenham, that's for sure. So I think Jacques Nienaber will be just wanting to see a continuation of that kind of form from the Springboks, and particularly against a strong All Black team. So playing Wales is one thing, playing the All Blacks on neutral ground is another thing. So I think Nienaber and the coaching staff will be looking for that intensity and making sure that the Springboks get away to a good start. We all know what happened at Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland. So with that in mind, I think both coaches will be looking to get through this game with a very good performance from their respective teams, trying to get through injury free and also without any disciplinary issues heading into their first game in the World Cup. Pretty easy to say, isn't it? But pretty hard to do on the pitch, I'm sure, when you're playing at this intensity in World Rugby. Now there's going to be a few people to watch out for in this particular game. I think that's going to be very interesting, with some positional things that are going on, but also what those players actually bring to the game. But before we get there, why don't we go through the two teams, and I'll give you my thoughts about those as well. So let's start off with the Springboks and have a look at their forwards for this game against the All Blacks. And in the front row we have the reliable trio, Stephen Kitsoff, Malcolm Marx and Frans Maherba, coming in to take on the All Blacks, and been really impressed with these guys in the games that they've started so far in this warm-up series. And I'm sure that Jacques Nienaber and the rest of the team will be very, very pleased with the service that this front row is giving the Springboks. They're playing very, very well in the scrums, and it'll be interesting to see this weekend how the All Black front three handle the Springboks experience and weight and power. Then in the locks this weekend for the Springboks, we've got Etzebeth and Mostert. I'm sure both these guys will be up for it against the All Blacks. In particular Etzebeth, that loss in Auckland would have been something that didn't inspire him very much. Of course, it was during that time surrounding very difficult circumstances in his family life, and I'm sure Etzebeth is going to come back with a vengeance in this game against the All Blacks on Friday. Then looking at the loose forwards for the Springboks this weekend, and Captain Courageous is back. Sia Kolesi is starting and will be the captain, of course. And then Peter Steph de Toy, who had a fantastic game, I thought, against Wales, is on the other flank. And then at number 8 we've got Dwayne Van Meulen, and I think that's going to add a lot of spice to the back row for the Springboks as well. So a very good forward pack, I think, to take on the All Blacks this weekend. I like the fact that Kalesi's getting another run, and it'll be interesting to see whether he gets the whole game or whether he gets to come off as he did last weekend against Wales. So moving into the backs now and looking at the Springboks, they've brought Faf de Klerk back in at halfback to accompany Manie Libbok. And if anything is wanting to be different in this game for Jacques Nienaber, he wants to see Libbok getting a higher percentage of kicking over, particularly from conversions and penalties. I think his infield kicking is not too bad, but he really needs to increase the percentage. Everybody's talking about it, of course, and it's going to be something we're going to be watching in this particular game from the Springboks. Then moving on to the centre pairing this weekend for the Springboks, and we have Andre Esterhuizen in at inside centre, and accompanying him is Canan Moodie, and a good move, I think, from Jacques Nienaber. I really like this idea of bringing Moodie outside centre. And I think we're going to see something fairly spectacular from Moodie. I like the way this guy plays. I mentioned it in my last video when I covered the Wales game. And I think Moodie brings that extra something special to the Springbok backline. And if you go back to the time where Rieko Ioane used to play on the wing for the All Blacks, and they brought him into outside centre, and it really changed his career as a rugby player. He got more of the ball, he was more damaging. And I think this is a good move by Jacques Nienaber to see whether it can have a similar impact on Canan Moodie. Remember, this guy's only 20 years old. He's just starting his international rugby career. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that outside centre position. Then on the wings for the Springboks, we've got Mapimpi on one wing, and we've got Kurtley Arenze on the other wing. So two good try-scoring specialists there, speedsters on the wings. And I think the Springboks are not going to be in any trouble when it comes to trying to press for tries from these two guys. And then in at fullback this weekend, we've got Damien Willemse, and another good choice there. I think we saw him come on against Wales last weekend. And Willemse is one of those players that can really make a difference in the back line. So we see Willie Leroux going to the bench for this particular match. So a really good team from the Springboks. I'm excited by it. I think it's going to be a really classic match again against the All Blacks. And so a really good team from the Springboks, and I think it's good that Jacques Nienaber is giving Esterhuizen and Moodie an opportunity there in the centres. A little bit of a different combination for the All Blacks to look at. And Jesse Kriel and Damien Zealander had a good game, of course, against Wales. So a new look backline for the Springboks. I think the forwards are very, very good, and it's going to be a good clash up front. Let me know what you think of this selection from the Springboks. Do you think they've got what it takes to take it over the All Blacks on neutral ground this Friday in Twickenham? Okay, let's take a look at the All Blacks team that's going to play against the Springboks now on Friday at Twickenham in London. And starting off in the forwards, and the All Blacks have selected a new front row for this particular game. We've got Ethan de Groot, we've got Dane Coles, and we've got Tyrell Lomax. So a really interesting combination here from Ian Foster, and the fact that Dane Coles has got to start instead of Cody Taylor probably suspects that they're just having a look at Dane Coles again under this type of pressure that he's going to get from the Springboks front row. So a good front row from the All Blacks, and well, time will tell. We'll see how that selection goes. And then in the locks, the All Blacks have gone with Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett. I guess those two were going to be in line for this game because of the injury, of course, to Brodie Retallick. And this will be one of the positions that the All Blacks are a little bit nervous about when it comes to injury. They can't afford to get either one of these two locks injured heading into their first game in the World Cup against France. The All Blacks. Moving out to the flanker position for the All Blacks this weekend, and we have Luke Jacobson coming in for Shannon Frizzell, who's got that little hamstring injury that the All Blacks are nursing at the moment. And Sam Cane, of course, who will be the captain of the All Blacks this weekend, is the other flanker. Ardie Savea at number 8. And it's going to be really good to see how he goes against the Springboks pack. He always plays a big game, Ardie Savea, when the Springboks are on the other side of the field. Heading into the backs for the All Blacks in this game, and Aaron Smith at number 9 accompanying Richie Mo'unga, and that seems to be the All Blacks go-to top pairing for their halves at the moment, both playing very, very well. And again, specialist positions where if injuries come along, the All Blacks, I feel, are going to be a little bit threatened. So let's hope that Aaron Smith and Richie Mo'unga get through this game unscathed as well. And then on the inside backs in this game, we have the regular pairing, if you like, of Jordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane. So Ian Foster is really putting out a top team against the Springboks, and I'm sure after that 3-week break for some of these players that they really want to get back into the mould again, get that momentum going as they head into that first World Cup game against France. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how Barrett and Ioane go against Moody and Esterhuizen. I think that's going to be one of the clashes of this particular game that we should look out for, and it's going to be very interesting indeed. And then on the wings for the All Blacks, we've got Mr. Reliable and Will Jordan, and on the other wing, Mark Talia comes in. So again, a good combination for the All Blacks, and then Bodie Barrett at fullback. So a very strong All Black team, almost their number 1 team, I would say, except for a couple of positions in Jacobson and maybe Cody Taylor, who's been left out for this particular game. Both coaches have decided to go with a 6-2 bench, and for the Springboks we see Willie LaRue and Cobus Reinach coming in, and for the All Blacks we've got Cam Roygaard and Anton Leonard-Brown. I suspect that once again their benches are going to be a very important factor in this particular game, and the strength of the South African forwards coming off the bench, will it be matched by the All Black strength? Having a look at those two respective benches, I think this is going to be a really interesting game, and I'd like to hear from you on what you think of these selections. Do you think both Jacques Nienaber and Ian Foster have gone the right way with their selections for this game? It's only 2 weeks away on Friday to the start of the Rugby World Cup, and I'm guessing that both coaches will want their top teams to have a run out and some real intensity, which I'm sure they're going to get from each other. Now, I just wanted to look at a couple of players in this game that I think are going to be worth keeping their eye on. I think we're going to see something special out of these players that I'm about to talk about in this particular game. And the first one is Pieter-Steph du Toit. Been extremely impressed by him in the last few games he's played for the Springboks. He's playing at an extraordinarily high level. He's been very good in set play, but he's been absolutely dynamic around broken play and making gains and breaks for the Springboks, and I think that's going to be an element of the game on Friday that's going to be very important for the Springboks. Can they get around the mauls and the breakdowns and have breaking situations where they put pressure on the All Blacks? And Pieter-Steph du Toit is absolutely a player that can do that, so watch out for him in this game on Friday. The other ones I would look out for, particularly from a South African point of view, is Canan Moody. As I've already said, I'm excited to see him starting at outside centre. I think he's going to add an extra piece of spice for the Springboks in that position. I also think he's going to be very valuable when it comes to stopping both Barrett and Ioane making some decisive breaks in that midfield. He's got a lot of speed, so if they do get through, he's going to be able to chase them down a lot easier in defence, and that's something you probably want to watch out for with Canan Moody. So I'm interested to see how he goes at outside centre. Excited about that guy. I think he's got superstar status written all over him, and want to see how he goes against the All Blacks in that particular position. Another player that I think you should watch out for this weekend against the All Blacks is Siya Kolisi. I think his motivation to come back now and play in the World Cup is extremely high, of course, and playing against the All Blacks, it always makes players have that extra piece of intensity, and I'm sure Siya Kolisi will be loving the challenge of being up against the All Blacks this Friday. So watch out from a huge game for him, whether he plays the whole 80 minutes or whether Jacques Nienaber decides to take him off again like we saw last weekend against Wales. We'll have to wait and find out. Another important component of this game is going to be how the front rows stack up against each other. Malcolm Marx, Stephen Kitsoff and Frans Maherba, of course, world-class front row up against the All Blacks. I'm not too sure about Dane Coles, being able to manage in that scrummaging against those guys. We're going to have to wait and see. Happy to be proven wrong, of course, but I think the Springboks might have a little bit of an edge against the All Blacks in the front row this weekend, and we might see that resulting also in penalty opportunities for Mani Libbok. So if that's the case, Libbok is going to have to make sure he's got his kicking boots on to take advantage, because I suspect that this game, from a points point of view, is going to be pretty close. And then on the All Black side of things, let's have a look at a couple of players there that I think are going to have big games this weekend. And the first one, of course, is Will Jordan, world-class winger and playing extraordinarily well since he's come back into this team from injury. And I think Will Jordan's going to be up for a big game, of course, against the Springboks on Friday. He's scoring almost a try a game for the All Blacks, and is very, very decisive in broken play. So watch for opportunities where Will Jordan is returning kicks from the Springboks and has a go at the Springbok line. He brings some really dynamic opportunities there for the All Blacks, and if he's teeing up with Beauden Barrett coming in from fullback, those two can really break through the South African line. So keep an eye on Will Jordan in this particular game. I'm also expecting a big game from Sam Whitelock in this game against the Springboks. I've been watching his form in the last couple of games, and Sam Whitelock is playing better than he ever has, I believe. He's man mountain in there for the All Blacks, Mr. Reliable. And it's not until you have a guy like Sam Whitelock not in the team that you realise even more how much he brings to the team. And I'm expecting him to have a great game against Mostert and Ebden Egsabeth this weekend. And then one other All Black player I think you should keep your eye on this weekend when he comes on from the bench, and that's going to be Anton Lienert-Brown. I think Anton Lienert-Brown is looking to get back to his best rugby form. He hasn't had too many opportunities for the All Blacks, and I think against South Africa he's going to be looking at doing something pretty special. So keep an eye on Anton Lienert-Brown in this particular game and see how he goes against the Springboks. So there we go. It's going to be a fascinating tussle again between the Springboks and the All Blacks. It's going to be a closer game than what it was at Mount Smart Stadium, that I'm sure of. And it's going to be a great lead up for both of these teams as they prepare for the Rugby World Cup starting in 2 weeks' time. Now don't forget to drop me your comments. I'd love to hear what you think about the makeup of these two teams. Do you think the coaches have got it right? Who would you have put in there? Or do you think it's a good positional change putting Canan Moodie into outside centre for the Springboks? So to make sure you don't miss a moment here on Inside Rugby, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to drop me your comments. I read them all and interested to what you have to say as we're getting closer and closer to that Rugby World Cup. Okay, well that's it for this particular video. Enjoy the game between the New Zealand All Blacks, the South African Springboks, being played at Twickenham on Friday, and I'll see you again very soon in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and enjoy your rugby. Bye for now.